Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jessica Worthington, and I'm the Director of the Office of Downtown Development with the Georgia Department of Community Affairs. And it is a wonderful Tuesday, and we're here to talk about business improvement districts. Our guest presenter is Aundi Lesley, who's the Downtown Development Director for the City of Rome. And I will have to confess to y'all that I speak about special tax districts quite a lot, but I was so impressed when I got to hear Aundi present on Rome's Business Improvement District. We were at a joint event maybe about a month or so ago. And we had been asked by Corin Thornton to do a presentation where I was talking about like kind of the mechanics of it, and Aundi came in to talk about like the practical implementation side. And she just did such an incredible job. And I was so blown away by it that I was like, Aundi, we have to do this as a webinar. And so we reached out and scheduled it. And honestly, the reason for that is it's just a great presentation. I love being able to see not just like talking about special tax districts, but to like really get a feel for how it's being implemented in the community. And I thought that Aundi just did such an incredible job presenting and hit on some things that I had never heard people present on before, and I just really loved it. But one of the reasons too is that I feel like out of all the special tax districts, business improvement districts is that low-hanging fruit that anybody who wants to do it really could undertake this. Now, granted, there's work in any type of special tax district that you're trying to pass, but in other states where Main Street programs may not be necessarily housed in municipal governments, we see a lot of business improvement districts existing as a way to help support and sustain the local program. So with that being said, Aundi, I'm gonna turn the show over to you and stop talking, and we'll save questions for the end. We'll circle back.
Well, thank you, Jessica. I'm super excited to be here today, and I'm actually going to tell on Jessica because we know that tax districts are not the most riveting subject to talk about. And when we got together in Noonan a few weeks ago, Jessica got up in front of everybody and was like, "Who's ready to talk about STDs?" And I was like, well, that's one way to get everybody's attention. So special tax districts, here we are. When I refer to BID, you guys know I'm talking about Business Improvement District. And Jessica's right. We're going to talk a lot about like practical implementation today. And I'm going to kind of give an overview of what a business improvement district is, and you guys feel free to ask questions at the end. But BID really has been an instrumental tool for the City of Rome for our downtown development program. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that has looked like. It's been in existence for almost 20 years. So we'll give you the good, the bad, the ugly, some do's and don'ts, hopefully, so you guys can learn from us. But for those of you guys who may not know me, my name is Aundi Lesley, and I am the Downtown Development Director for the City of Rome. I have been in the Main Street and downtown development world since 2017, previously in another community, and joined the City of Rome in 2020. So a lot of this, what I'll be sharing today is, we'll be referring to back in the day, when this was initially passed, but I still have several board members who are around and who were heavily involved, so I've learned a lot from them kind of along the way. But to give you guys a little bit of context, so you guys can better understand our budget when I refer to it a little later on in the presentation, this is a snapshot of our downtown. So our city population is just over 38,000, so we still very much feel like a small town, although technically we're referred to as a mid-size or medium-sized town. But our downtown does have a significant footprint. We have 408 properties in our downtown district, 340 active business licenses. A lot of those are professional services. We have lots of real estate groups. We have lots of attorneys and things of that nature. But we also have a significant residential component in our downtown. So we are currently at 229 residential units. We will be more than doubling that in the next 18 months, which I'll talk about in just a little while. So we're really excited for what's to come. We have 53 retailers, 33 food service. We're actually up to 11 salons now, and 3 hotels. So I wanted to kind of give some context and help you guys understand when we're talking about our numbers. This is why, because we have a fairly large downtown. in the grand scheme of things. So what is a business improvement district? In short, a bid is a special tax assessment that's levied against properties in a specific area. So when I talk about our bid, I refer to it as the cherry on top. These are the things that are funded, our bid funds, our quality of life initiative, our events, fund programs, and different things that we get to do. So I am one of 9. I have a team of 9, and we are all graciously funded by the city, thank goodness. So the city pays for our salaries and our benefits and all that good stuff, but our bid is what funds our actual program. And our programming. We do have a parking enterprise fund. You guys know, if you've been to Rome, parking is a whole thing. So we have a full-time parking manager. We have 2 parking ambassadors, and we also have 2 grounds maintenance technicians. And in addition, you guys probably know Megan, who's our marketing and events manager, and Jennifer, who's our admin coordinator. So we have an awesome team, but all the fun stuff that we get to do is funded by our bid. So a bid is a managed district in a defined area. It's enabled by the official code of Georgia. It's an organization created and run by local business and property owners, and that is a key component that we'll talk about as we kind of go along. It's a funded organization. It must have a plan. It must have measurable goals, and it's revenue that's generated through a special tax. So Rome's bid, when this was initially started back in the early 2000s, we actually put together a steering committee that was dedicated to this business improvement district and passing it. That was definitely needed at the time, but now it's managed fully by our DDA, and several of our DDA board members were a part of that steering committee. So depending on what the political climate is for you guys and what your downtown stakeholders are kind of feeling towards the city, if this is something you guys are considering, it may be worth you guys putting together a separate committee for it. But we established a mission for our business improvement district, which is to provide an equitable funding process supporting the ongoing development of the city center as a valued economic and historic resource. And I chose these 2 pictures for a reason. These are from the early 80s, and this was before our Broad Street streetscape project was implemented in the late 80s. And so that was really the first time that this idea of a bid was introduced to our downtown. It wasn't a completely foreign concept because our streetscape project was actually funded by in part by our merchants at the time. They actually took it upon themselves. They approached the city and they said, listen, if you guys will tax us, we would like to be part of this and help make this happen. We got Georgia Power involved, and it was the first time that they really got to see a public-private partnership and what kind of impact that can have. And so they taxed themselves for 5 years from 86 to 90. The entire project was $1.2 million. And it really did create that sense of pride. I know that's a little cheesy, but it really showed them for the first time what it looked like for them to have a true vested interest in such a large scale project. And so it really did set the stage for our business improvement district, because at the time our board members were able to refer back to that streetscape project. So we got to do all the cool things like adding brick pavers, crosswalks, medians with trees, underground utilities, period lighting, all the cool things. And so they were able to say, look how much good that did. Let's do that again and keep that going in the form of a business improvement district. So a bid really does allow for a wide variety of service options. It's created and governed by those who pay, and it's implemented by those who pay. So that was one of the best things I think that we could have done. Was it was really led by our stakeholders. It was led by board members. It was led by property owners. You guys know as well as I do, oftentimes, staff ends up kind of carrying the load and carrying the weight of what we do day to day. But it really, for it to be meaningful and not be associated with, oh, this is just another thing that the city is doing. This is another money grab by the city. It really was important for this to be led by stakeholders. So it's managed through a nonprofit organization, in our case, our Downtown Development Authority. It's established through petition support from those who pay. So it has to pass a petition with a 51% majority, and it provides for a set term of existence. You can do 5 years or 10 years. We chose 10 years. to see that long-term impact, and also because it was quite difficult to pass the first time. And so thankfully, my predecessors had the forethought to set that term for 10 years. And it does, in fact, require a plan. So I'm going to share with you guys our management plan and kind of how we came to those initiatives and how we kind of run our operations here. So this is also just as important, something that a bid is not. A bid is not a replacement for government services. So it was very important to our board at the time, our stakeholders at the time, that this was not going to be a way to replace existing services that the city was providing. So that's actually built into our ordinance and built into our management plan, that the city of Rome will maintain existing services at a verifiable baseline service level. So the example that I use a lot, because this was kind of a point of contention earlier on, was that like we're not going to use these funds to like pay my salary, for instance, or pay police officers, for instance, for dedicated downtown, because that's already a service that the city provides. So this is also not an arm of the local government. It's its own independent body that's governed by our Downtown Development Authority. It's a way to populate the district with national, or I'm sorry, it's not a way to populate the district with national retailers at the expense of local businesses. And it's certainly not just another tax. That's the last thing that we want our bid to become to our merchants and property owners, is just another tax. So we are always kind of touting what we're doing, what projects we're doing, what good we're doing, what kind of how we're able to give back through grants and things of that nature, so that it doesn't become just another tax. So our management plan, your management plan has to have a specific set of boundaries so that you know who is going to be paying into the business improvement district. So this gray area here is our district. We refer to it as our downtown district, our bid district. It's all one and the same now. The management plan also outlines the services that are to be provided and how the services are to be provided. It outlines the assessment that is going to be levied. It outlines the budget, how those funds are going to be used, and the specific time frame. So at the end, I'll share with you guys a copy of our management plan if you are interested. So again, Official Code of Georgia says that a bid needs to pass one of two ways. It needs to at least pass by 51% of the municipal taxpayers in that area, or municipal taxpayers that are owning at least 51% of the assessed value. So we took the approach that we were going to get the municipal taxpayers owning at least 51%, because we have several developers here. We have a lot of heavy hitters. And so that was the approach that our DDA took and the steering committee took initially, was if we can get these people on board, A, we'll reach that 51%, but B, those people can probably convince a lot of our other property owners and stakeholders that this is a good thing. So initially, like I said, it barely passed. I think it was like 57% maybe. And one of our board members still talks about how when they reached that 57%, they all got together and had a beer, and she like started crying because it was just such a feeling of relief. So like Jessica mentioned, there definitely is some work to be put in on the front end, but here we are almost 20 years later and still reaping the benefits. So it has been well worth all the hard work that they put in. And then when our bid sunset in 2015 and it came time to renew, it passed with flying colors the next round, because people could see the value that this quality of life brings to our downtown and to our community as a whole. So what does that process look like? I included a copy here. This was and still is one of our heavy hitters. He owns several properties and has done several developments downtown. And so this is what he got in the mail. It explains what we were trying to do, and it has a section at the bottom that shows exactly at the time what he would have been paying, what his millage rate was, what his assessed value was for all of his properties, so he could see specifically what he would be paying that year for the business improvement district. So everybody got a copy of this in the mail with a copy of our management plan. And our board actually divided blocks amongst themselves and went door to door to, just like you would think any other petition that you're doing, to get signatures and to kind of explain what the process was and what we were trying to do. So once that passed, we took it to our city commission, and our city commission established an ordinance allowing us to levy the assessment. The city actually collects the assessment for us, and then the dollars are passed to the DDA. So the bid dollars are managed completely independently from the city. So we're not subject to the same procurement process and all those fun things as if it were, through city funds. So our business improvement district actually allows 2 revenue streams for us. We have a business license surcharge. So anybody who opens a business and gets a business license within our downtown district pays a $150 fee on top of their normal business licensing fee. So when our bid was originally passed, that was a $100 fee. And then when we re-upped our bid in 2015, 2016, we actually increased that fee to $150. And then the second revenue stream is through the property assessment. So we actually levy a 1.5 millage rate, which when you do the math is 0.0015, against 40% of the assessed value of a property. So I'll show you exactly what that looks like here in a second. But this right-hand side shows the breakdown according to our bid management plan of how we use those funds. So regardless of how much we accrue throughout the year, 46% is devoted to economic development, marketing, and promotions. 38% is devoted to our grants and design initiatives. And then 16% is dedicated to reserves and management. We pay the city a $6,000 management fee because they collect the funds for us. And so it kind of just goes to offset the rest of our budget that comes from the city funds. So I wanted to show you guys an example, because I was curious for myself as I was kind of learning more about bid. We have a lot of our merchants that say, I pay into bid and I do this, this, and this. And so I wanted to know exactly what that looks like. So I used our board chair as an example. I'll pick on him because he likes to pick on me a lot. But if you guys were here in Rome for our Mobilized Main Street, you met him. His name is Harry Brock. He's our DDA chair, and you actually toured his home in his beautiful loft while you were here. So he owns 412 Broad Street. He has owned this property for over 20 years. It was his office at one point. There's been an array of retailers on the street level storefront. And about 4 or 5 years ago, he and his wife renovated it, and now they actually live upstairs. So Harry is somebody that has been around for a long time. He's been a champion and an advocate for downtown Rome for many, many years. And he was actually somebody that would donate and sponsor events before bid was a thing in Rome. So he and others would donate as much as $500 for our First Friday concerts, for different events, because they saw the value of bringing that foot traffic in and having those fun things for people to do in the community, those fun free events that brought people downtown. So when bid originally passed, his property was valued at $203,000 and some change, and he paid $122.11. Okay, so that's obviously much cheaper than him donating $500 plus dollars for sponsorships and things of that nature. So as the market has changed, as property values have increased, his property value has more than doubled. His property was assessed last year at almost $500,000, and last year he only paid still $287.44. So this whole idea of a business improvement district is everybody gives a little versus just a few people giving a lot. And so it's distributed kind of evenly, a little bit more evenly than it would have been beforehand, and everybody has a vested interest in what's going on downtown. And so if you guys decide to go back and take this to your community, it's important to know, that while your downtown may not be as large as Rome's is, anything that you guys are learning here today or otherwise can be scaled to fit your needs and fit your community. But this is something like very practical. I think you could take back to some of your property owners and say, look, this is realistically what we're looking at is, $100, $200, less than $300 a year for each individual that's paying in to provide this quality of life. So here is a snapshot of our annual budget for 2023. We are projected to bring in $135,000 this year. and some change, which is mind-blowing because the first time they passed bid in 2005, they were projected to bring in $45,000. So we obviously can do a lot more with 135,000. And so it's broken down based on those same percentages that we talked about in economic development, marketing, and promotions. We have our grants divvied up under our grant programs, and then at the very bottom is our management and contingency, or our reserves. So you can see that this year we're projected to put back $15,000 in some change just for a rainy day, because you never know what's going to happen. You never know if the market crashes or property values decrease, what that might mean for bid in the future. So it's always nice to have a little nest egg if you need it. So last year we gave away $41,000 in grants from our bid funds. It's my favorite thing that we get to do, is giving back to the people who put into our business improvement district. So the bulk of that came from our facade grants, which you guys I'm sure are probably familiar with and may even have your own facade grant program. We started a marketing grant program during the pandemic in response to our merchants and what they needed at the time, and it's been so successful that we've continued to grow that program the last 3 years. We fund the marketing grants, and we partner with our local small business development center office. They merchants and recipients actually have to meet with them to put together a marketing plan for how they're going to use those funds to kind of make the most of them. And then our last grant program is our event impact grant, and this is one of the best things I think we've ever done for our program, is an event impact grant. So we actually incentivize other organizations to come and host their events in our downtown, and we give them grant money for that. So that way we're not having to bear the burden of planning all of those events. We don't touch a single parade that happens. Thank God. I've done parades and I know what a beast those are and what a headache those can be. So we have other organizations that host those types of things. They can apply for an impact grant, and that continues to get more and more competitive each year. This year we had, I think it was like 12 or 15 applicants, and we only budgeted for 6 $1,000 impact grants. So it continues to get more competitive. We'll continue to hopefully grow that program in the future, but that's something that you should consider for your own downtown if you have not before, because it's been an amazing thing for us. Here are some examples of some projects that we've been able to fund through our business improvement district budget the last couple of years. We made a huge campaign for Light at Rome to raise money for Christmas decorations. And so the city graciously gave us capital funds to do that. We've been raising funds. And in addition, we were able to leverage some of the bid dollars. And so we bought that giant wreath that you see on the left-hand side. It was $14,000, which is insane, but it was so fun. It was a great photo op. It's right in front of the Carnegie building. And so we plan to continue to grow that even further in the coming years. We've done several art projects, art contests, things of that nature, which you can see in the middle. And then on the right-hand side, we redid all of our wayfinding signage, and all of that was 100% funded through our bid dollars. Housed under our business improvement and business development committee, we fund different programs for giving them resources and how to sustain their business. So we just wrapped up the Accelerated Entrepreneurship Workshop. We partnered with our chamber and our Small Business Development Center to offer this. So we sponsored the class to bring down the fees. The fee for that class was originally $299. So we were able to donate a significant amount to bring that cost down. And then we were also able to sponsor 5 of our merchants to attend that class at no cost to them. It was so amazing to see some of our existing merchants participate in that and see some aspiring entrepreneurs in the community that are looking to open their own business. I can't say enough good things about it. So if you guys don't have a partnership with your local SBDC, I would highly encourage you guys to do that, because that was a wonderful program. It was so successful that we plan to continue to do more in the future. We did our River District mural that was completely funded. We're on actually phase 2 now, which is the stairwells, completely funded by bid dollars. Our Gateway project, this was identified in our 2012 master plan. this has been a long time in the making, and we finally have a rendering and engineer drawings, and hopefully the Gateway project will come to fruition in the very near future. But a huge chunk of that will be funded by bid dollars. Our design committee has actually been saving for the last 6 or 7 years. They save $10,000 a year to put towards the Gateway initiative. And then, of course, all the things we know and love, all of our events are funded by our bid dollars, our First Friday concerts, our Arts Fest that we do every year in May, our Fiddlin' Fest that we do every fall. And then on the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see our Blooms on Broad project. That was a partnership that we did with our community foundation. Such a fun project, has made such a difference in our downtown. And we also fund out of bid dollars our median planters. And so such a small project, but you guys know goes such a long way in your downtown and beautification efforts. So that's something that we plan to continue to do for years to come. And then I also wanted to mention how we've used bid in our long-term planning. When I gave this presentation a few weeks ago in Noonan, Corin said, you know, Rome is an overnight success, 40 years in the making. And no truer words have ever been spoken. And I know I'm preaching to the choir. You guys know that so many of these wonderful projects in our own communities don't happen overnight, and they take the daily grind, and you know, working day in and day out towards these things that our community doesn't see, but they just see, you know, when these things have come to fruition, they see the benefits of it. So we have used our bid to kind of work alongside our master plan and doing some forecasting. So our river district, again, if you were at Mobilize Main Street, you got to experience our river district. It's where our awesome Blossom Hill barbecue is, and Aventine. That's really where a lot of our efforts and resources have been going the last few years. So it was identified as an area of development in our 2012 master plan. So when bid came time to renew in 2015 and 2016, our board members said, you know what, it's time for us to look at that area and kind of bring them into the fold. So when we renewed our bid, we actually redrew our district boundaries to include the river district area. And we started collecting on those funds for all of those parcels in that area across the river. But B, it allowed those merchants that were already there to kind of be a part of what we had going on downtown. So it allowed them to participate in events. It allowed them to be eligible for facade grants. We've done several facade grants in that area, and just allow them to be part of all the amazing things that we have going on downtown. So 2012 master plan, 2016 bid expansion, 2017 we did a SPLOS project for the streetscape initiatives along North 5th Avenue and West 3rd. And then last year in 2022, we received an ARC grant of $600,000 to do water and sewer upgrades. So this literally started over 10 years ago. It's still a work in progress. Our private developers are bringing in what you see in the upper left-hand corner, awesome mixed-use development. We'll have 242 residential units. And so that's what I was referring to when I said our residential capacity is going to more than double, which we're super excited about. All of this started more than 10 years ago, and it's still not even done yet. So I guess I share that to say, don't get discouraged. If you are still in the midst of a long-term project, we know that it takes a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of patience. Sometimes it takes the right political climate to make those things happen. And so don't get discouraged if you're in the midst of that process right now. We know what it's like, but we hope to have everything set and done within the next 18 to 24 months. Hopefully the streetscape project will be done as we work alongside the private developers that are bringing in the awesome mixed use development. So I wanted to share a few best practices, again, kind of learning from our wins and our mistakes along the years. So stakeholders leading the charge. This is a must, in my opinion. That way staff kind of gets to separate themselves from it a little bit. The city gets to separate themselves from it a little bit. And this is really owned and managed by your stakeholders, whether that be board members or merchants that maybe just see the value in having this revenue stream. The funds are managed by myself and our DDA chair. So when we pull the funds from the city, they go into our 2 bank accounts. That's probably something else I could have added. You really just need 1 bank account. There's no need for 2. But we have 2 bank accounts. One is our Economic Development Promotions bank account, and the other is our Design bank account. And so my name is on the account. Our board chair's name is on the account. I write the checks from those. We keep great records. And at the end of every year, we submit our financial review to our finance department just for checks and balances and transparency. And every single month at our board meetings, we go over with a fine-tooth comb any of the funds that have been expended, any new revenue that's coming in, just for the sake of transparency. And because my name is on the bank account, I want to make sure that there's more than enough transparency. But it has been so helpful for us to have access to those funds as needed. That way we're not subject to, waiting for a check request or what have you from the city. Having 1 district, we used to have 2 separate downtown districts and business development or business improvement districts, and it just didn't really make sense. So we merged them to be one and the same, and it has just simplified everything. So I would definitely encourage you guys to just have 1. Supplemental services, again, cannot stress that enough. This is not meant to replace any existing services that the city already offers or that you guys already offer. So if your city excuse me, already funds events, maybe you could do a new fun event, maybe you could do a new grant program or something to offer in addition to what you guys already offer. Diversify your revenue streams. I can't stress this enough. I know Georgia Main Street, Jessica, they talk about this all the time. It's important. It's a good, rule of thumb. But for us, what I found when I got here was that we had just kind of become complacent in our bid district and in those funds, knowing that we could count on them. And we didn't really bring in any other revenue of significance. And so we're kind of just resting on our laurels, if you will, and not looking to grow our events. And so we introduced new sponsorship opportunities. We started raising the vendor fees slowly but surely. We started introducing other fundraisers because at the end of the day, the programs that we want to offer, the new public art opportunities that we want to do, whatever that might look like, ultimately is going to take more funds, right? And so we started looking at other ways to diversify those things, and we've been able to grow our events significantly since then. And we just have some really cool projects. Like I said, public art projects. We're a part of the Georgia Economic Placemaking Collaborative this year. And so we're really excited to see what opportunities come from that. But now we have, funding opportunities to be able to make those things happen. So small physical tangible wins. It's really important whether you set your business improvement district to a 5-year term or a 10-year term, that you're implementing physical, tangible things that people can see, feel, and touch so that they can really understand, okay, this is what my bid dollars are going toward. When we went to Macon last year for our conference, we actually stole the idea from them to have the little yard signs that say your bid dollars at work. I thought that was so genius, so that people can start associating, because right, the general public doesn't understand what a bid is or what that means. They just think it's taxpayer dollars, right? And so it's really important for us to start kind of touting and differentiating the bid dollars versus just general tax dollars. And then again, I mentioned submitting an annual financial review. I just always think that's a best practice, especially if your name's on the bank account. Let's see here. So we're going to do a little questions and answers session if you guys have any questions, but if you use this QR code, it will take you to a PDF copy of our management plan that outlines everything. It has a copy of our map, district boundaries. It talks about our budget. It talks about our millage rate. All that good stuff will be available to you there. And if you can't figure out how to use the QR code, hopefully you can. If not, shoot me an email and I'd be glad to share any of our resources with you.
Awesome. And Aundi, because I know we're going to get questions, would you be comfortable sharing your presentation with us so that way we could send it out to all the participants who have been on today's webinar? Awesome. All right. Time for questions. And I see we've already got a couple in there. So just to clarify, Aundi, with the business license fee,
Mhm.
you said you started at, what was it, 100 and then went up to 150, correct?
That is correct. And so
Okay.
they pay all of their
So,
normal licensing fees, and they pay that on
mhm,
top if they're in the downtown district.
that's what I was wondering. If it's like, they have a regular one and then that's on top of it, or if that was an all-in kind of thing.
It is not all in, so they pay their normal licensing fee, whatever that might look like for them, and then they pay
Mhm.
the bid fee on top of that, and the bid fee is what comes to us.
Perfect, perfect. Um, so, another question. It was my previous understanding that a fiduciary board is required to manage the funds that is separate from the DDA board. Is that correct, or no additional board is required? Um,
I would definitely check with your attorney before you make that decision. We did set it up that way initially, but once it was passed, it was handed over and merged to the Downtown Development Authority. So I don't think a separate one is required. But I
mhm.
also don't know the official code of Georgia, by heart. So it's definitely something I would check with your attorney on.
Yeah, I agree. I'm pretty sure that in the law, it just requires that you have a board that manages it. But I don't think it requires a separate fiduciary board. I would second Andy and say, always check with your attorney and the law.
Mhm.
Um, okay, next question. How do you guys deal with business or property owners that may feel their business isn't getting enough attention or that their area isn't getting enough? I feel that I would get lots of complaints from some of my businesses if we invested in anything that was beyond their block.
Yeah, that's a tough one. And I think that's a tough one regardless of whether or not you have a bid. If you have a membership program or if you just have, your regular Main Street district, that's a balancing act. So we do have a couple of examples of that. One is the long-term river district plans, like I mentioned. So when we brought those people in, they started paying in 2016. They started paying that $150 fee, which we know is not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things. However, they are paying into it, so they have a vested interest. And all the property owners started paying that tax assessment. And so while they could participate in our events, that was really the only direct benefit at the time that they were kind of seeing from bid. We have made it a conscious effort to everything that we do when we do our wayfinding signs and things like that, that we try to include that area as best we can. But at the end of the day, and those of you guys that were here last year know, it's not the safest area. The sidewalks are not in great shape. We have no crosswalks over there. And so it really is a delicate balance for us. We planned a couple of events. We did a couple of events the last couple of years down there, and we just saw that for safety and logistics, we just decided it's not a good idea for us to do that again until the streetscape project is done. And so that's been a tough pill to swallow. So we try to make sure that we are including them in every way that we can, but we also just have to remind them that this is a long-term thing. And while they would love to see this project happen yesterday, that there's growing pains. And so these same merchants that have been asking for this, in when is this going to happen? This was a 2017 SPLOST. Why isn't this done? Well, when we started the construction last year, who do you think were the first people complaining about it? It was all of them. And so we're like, yeah, this is kind of what happens. Like, we know it's a huge pain and it is an inconvenience, but like, you're going to have to deal with the growing pains in order to see the benefits and reap the benefits of this once it's all said and done. And something that I didn't mention, we refer to the Broad Street Streetscape project a lot when we talk about that. When those merchants decided to tax themselves back in the 80s, I have the stats somewhere, they saw an increase during construction, the first year during construction, they saw a 7% increase. That was in 1987. So even though you're dealing with growing pains, there's still going to be benefits that come along with that. And you just have to keep reminding them, it's not about how this is impacting you today. It's about what this is going to mean for your business for the next, however many years to come, and what this means for our community years to come. And that's probably something that I think we can all relate to.
Absolutely. And I would say too, for the argument of, people not wanting to see that investment beyond like their front door or even their block, the idea is too that, you're trying to reach a broader audience because the downtown itself may be a draw. Whereas if you're, only thinking of downtown through the lens of your individual business, your audience might be more limited, just depending on whether you're a boutique or a salon or, whatever it is, you happen to be trying to get people in your door for. So, kind of that idea of like rising tides, raises all ships. And I've used this example before too, but, when you're going to look for a car, you go to the areas where there's multiple car dealerships, right? Because you want to see what's out there and be able to have that experience all together, right? Not just go to one place and be done. And so that's kind of the idea of downtown. It's, we're bringing you in to this district, and hopefully within this district, you can find something that suits your needs.
Mm-hmm. And I also want to be clear that we haven't won everybody over. It's not like every single person in our downtown is now a champion of the business improvement district. I just had a conversation recently with one of our developers, and he was talking about how, he had to pay $15,000 for his water tap fees, and he invested almost $1 million rehabbing this building. And, of course, we're so grateful that he has done all of that work. But in his mind, this is like just more money that the city's taken from him, and we had another community from South Georgia that was doing their planning retreat up here with their city council, and they invited us to dinner, and we were eating at his restaurant. And they said, they just put him on the spot, and they're like, so tell us about this business improvement district and these taxes that you're paying the city. How they want to implement something similar. How does that, work for you? And I was sitting with my boss and our city manager, and we all just kind of like held our breath, and I'm like, oh no, here it goes, And he actually said, while I'm not the biggest fan of paying tons of money to the city every single year through, all of these fees, alcohol fees, whatever, at the end of the day, if the business improvement district is providing progress, then I support it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I think we've won over our biggest curmudgeon. So all of that to say, it's not all going to be rainbows and sunshine.
Yeah. Talk to us, Aundi, about the compliance side, like the accountability, the reporting. What are you required to do in regards to the bid?
We are required to provide financial reports. It's also part of public record and open record, subject to open records request. And so for us, that just looks like probably what you're already doing in your own downtown. We go over our bank statements and our expenses every single board meeting, and it's all readily available. In the past, we weren't always the best about keeping up with our records, and we just kind of waited on the city to provide us statements, which you guys know your city is probably the same way. We run a couple months behind on everything. And so I wanted to have real-time access. So anytime we expend any amount of money, it goes into our spreadsheet. So if one of my board members or somebody from the public came in today and said, how much did you spend on this? How much money do you have in your bank account? We can pull that information from them. And for compliance, our city does require, since they issue us the funds, to do the financial review, which is obviously not a problem for us. I do think it would be a lot more difficult if our DDA had a contentious relationship with the city, but thankfully we have a wonderful symbiotic relationship, and we all kind of see the greater vision, and so it makes things like that run a lot more smoothly. So yeah, that's pretty much it for compliance. We have to comply with our local, the official code of Georgia allows you to enable your own local legislation, right? Your own local ordinance. And so we have to comply with that local ordinance. And so the way I view it is, if we ever want to make a change, we're really just a first and second reading away from changing our local ordinance. And so, yeah, I mean, it's no different than any other local ordinance, that we abide by. So it's really not as complicated as I think we make it out to be.
Yep. And because it's all locally driven with local ordinances, there is no state reporting requirement.
Exactly, correct.
Next question. We have a growing downtown. However, some of our prime properties along Main Street are privately owned with individuals who refuse to place tenants in them. We have provided incentives with no avail. Do you have examples of policies that restrict property owners from keeping vacant spaces?
So we do not do a vacancy tax here in Rome. It's something that we have talked about actually very recently. We regulate a lot in Rome. We have a paid parking program that everybody is totally fine with, except for some of our merchants that just refuse to abide by the rules. And so we regulate parking. We have a no smoking ordinance downtown, which you wouldn't think would be contentious, but it did turn rather contentious when we banned smoking on Broad Street. So we regulate a lot, right? And so we just decided for now it's not the right time for us to regulate that specific problem. So we do incentivize just like you guys do. At the end of the day, we still deal with a few vacancies. Thankfully, it's not a lot, but that might be something with the position that you're in with your downtown. It might be the right time for that. And so it can also be, I think, a great tool. Jen Gregory talked about it at our Macon conference with retail strategies. And I know there's several other communities, Jessica could probably name some, that utilize that. And so I would definitely encourage you guys to reach out to one of those communities.
Yeah, I was going to say we do have some examples that we can share with you of ordinances that other programs and cities have adopted. So it is, I think, becoming more commonplace for communities that have had that challenge, just as a way of, addressing it, nipping it in the bud.
Right.
Yep. All right. I think that's all. We did had all the questions covered. So
awesome.
Thank you, Aundi. I appreciate it. This is, every time I listen to this, I feel like I take away something else from it. So this is great. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us today and share how the Business Improvement District has, helped revitalize Rome and kind of catalyze the program to another level.
Well, thank you for having me. I hope everybody learned something beneficial. I'll share the presentation with you, Jessica, so you can distribute it. And then, of course, my email is on the screen. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate y'all being here, and we'll see you next time.